open up the session. Liz to follow by Michelle.
Thank you. Just on the basis of the very interesting comments that you've just mentioned, Dr. Ireton, do you feel that there is a case for a judge-led inquiry in order to ensure that there is public trust?
I think it depends on the subject matter and on the focus of the inquiry and what it needs to do. So I don't think there's a single answer as to whether it should be judges or not judges.
So what criteria would you use in deciding that it should be judge-led?
Two ways of looking at this. Firstly, if you've got a more forensic inquiry or very huge volumes of information and it plays to the skill set that judges have, it can be appropriate. If you have a more policy-focused inquiry, it will often be better to have an expert in the subject matter and in terms of implementation policy changes. I also think it makes a big difference about the individual as well. Inquiries are very different processes. They require people to approach it in an innovative way, to recognise it's a different sort of process that aren't just going to automatically bring their previous experience to them. It is a much more team-based working, so you want people who work well in a team. So it's about selecting the right person as well. So sometimes that might be a judge because it's the right person in terms of personality and skill set and so forth, and sometimes it may not be.
So in your experience, that's a discussion that will be had between, well, in this case, with the Scottish Government and a proposed chair?
Yes, yeah. And I think more thought needs to be given at the point of appointing a chair in terms of the individual as well as whether it's just a judge or not a judge, but in terms of how they're going to fit within that type of process.
That's very helpful. Lord Hardy, could I ask you about the terms of reference situation? Because obviously the terms of reference in any public inquiry are a matter primarily for the Scottish Government to decide. And in some inquiries, those affected by the inquiry, plus obviously the chair of the inquiry and his team, will have input to what these terms of reference are. We've had 3 inquiries, I think I'm right in saying, the Penrose, the child abuse and the COVID one, where the terms of reference have changed over time. And that's because certain evidence has come out and there's a case for making a change. Do you feel that we're in a situation where, because of the difficulties in some public inquiries, we often have the pressure to change the terms of reference?
I'm aware of some inquiries where there have been attempts to extend the terms of reference. It didn't happen in the tram inquiry. But I think it's important to get the terms of reference right at the beginning. And that's a matter, I think, for discussion between the government and the chair who's about to be appointed. When I was about to be appointed, I was told what the terms, or I was given the draft terms of reference, and that was the indication of what the government were looking for. I think I suggested a minor adjustment to that, and that they remained like that. So I'm aware, for instance, in the Sheikh Bayou inquiry, there was a request to extend the terms of reference, which the Minister refused. And I can see that in that inquiry, it was clear what was being sought was to find out what happened and who, if anybody, was responsible.
But if there is evidence that comes to the inquiry that was obviously not foreseen, do you think it's an appropriate process to change the term or to extend or modify the terms of reference that allows that evidence to become quite a critical part of the inquiry?
Well, if the evidence came in, it's presumably coming in because the chair has indicated that he or she is interested to hear it. And once they've heard it, then it can form part of the report. You know, it's difficult to see how you've, having allowed it in, you simply ignore it, or you then try to accommodate it by saying, well, I've heard that evidence, oh dear, it's not within my terms of reference. That should have been a process that had gone through the chair's mind before he allowed it.
But just to be absolutely clear, if that situation does arise where there is evidence forthcoming that wasn't foreseen at the start, am I correct in thinking that it's for the chair to have to go back to the Scottish Government for any amendment or adjustment to the terms of reference?
Yes, no, it would be for the chair to do that. And part of the difficulty of that is that what happens now that you've extended the terms of reference, does that open the floodgates for another chapter of evidence that you really hadn't anticipated? So you then set your inquiry team out to see if there are any other piece of evidence within that extended terms of reference, which of course will extend your term to the time of your inquiry.
And just before I ask this question, may I put on the public record that I'm very involved in the Eljamel inquiry in terms of my own casework being submitted. If it transpires through the inquiry that other jurisdictions may have some influence on determining what evidence is relevant and what might apply, how would that be taken on board by the chair of the inquiry in Scotland in relation to the discussions with the Scottish Government?
What do you mean?
If it was the case that these the terms of reference have proven not to be sufficient to allow evidence from another jurisdiction to be taken into consideration, is that a matter that then has to come back to the chair of the Scottish inquiry to be discussed with the Scottish ministers?
If you're speaking about evidence from someone in a foreign jurisdiction, that's a problem, because the chair would have no power to require that. That actually came up in the Edinburgh tram inquiry. But we were fortunate that we had discussions with the relevant core participants, and they agreed that their witnesses would come over from Germany.
That's why I'm asking the question, actually, because I was aware of that. And obviously in the 2005 Act it's very clear that there is limited scope. In fact, as I understand it, even recommendations can be made to other jurisdictions. But nonetheless, some of the evidence may actually be quite relevant to the public inquiry, and it's just what process can be used to open that up.
I think the only, we thought about this quite hard, long and hard, and I reached the conclusion that the only solution was to have a discussion with the relevant core participant and to persuade them that it was in their interests for their witnesses from Germany to come and give evidence. The alternative would be that I would have commented in the report that we had made that request of the core participants and they had failed, they had refused, and that would be the sanction, particularly for a major company which is hoping to get contracts in the future.
That's very helpful, thank you.